Thank you. The final question, this segment on foreign policy and defense, appropriately is on the two wars that are being fought presently. And there was a question from the audience, which I'll phrase this way. While the Iraq war is winding down, what is your view of the Afghanistan war, keeping in mind that Afghanistan provides 80% of the world's opium supply? John?
Well, I've been on the record since I decided to run that I think we should end our involvement in Afghanistan. It's a war that's gone on for a long time now. It's now currently the longest war that we've had in U.S. history. We had every right. We might not have done it the way I would have preferred at the beginning, but we had every right to go in after Osama bin Laden. And we unfortunately have been there, I think, far too long. Since I made my announcement that I was running and came and announced that position, I'm happy to say that a number of conservative columnists and politicians have also come out and joined me. George Will, Tony Blankley, media conservative person Joe Scarborough, Michael Savage, of all people, Lieutenant Colonel and current U.S. Senate candidate Chuck DeVore, who spent a lot of time with Charlie Wilson back in the 80s there in Afghanistan. And current U.S. Congressman Tom McClintock and Dana Rohrabacher, another person who spent time there in Afghanistan. Interesting article in, of all places, The Nation, recently talked about how Dana Rohrabacher and Tom McClintock said that the majority of the Republican caucus in Washington, D.C. would like to end our involvement in Afghanistan. They are waiting for a signal from the voter base, frankly. So hopefully we'll send them that message this time around. As I mentioned before, the business of our military is to do one thing, and that's to protect our lives, protect our citizens. We are not in the business of nation building, and even if we were, we have to look at a place like Afghanistan and think, is this even possible? You know, the British and the Russians tried to do exactly that in the Great Game in the 19th century. They left a mess behind. I don't think it's possible when you have a country that has a 28% literacy rate to build a police force that's supposed to read and write reports. So I think the episode itself is going to end with reconciliation sooner rather than later.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay. I couldn't disagree more. I think Afghanistan is a very important ground right now that we have to maintain. Mind you, we have the border with Pakistan. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. If we create a vacuum in Afghanistan, that vacuum will be filled, and it will make it harder for Pakistan to defend its border if the Taliban and Al-Qaeda have safe haven in Afghanistan. I think that's very clear. Everyone wants the troops to come home. They just don't want to have a bigger war later. I remember, John, in the WorldNet Daily article, you said that, you know, we should pull our guys out of Iraq right now and keep our fingers crossed that they won't be pulled back in. I don't think of that as a good foreign policy. We have to stay there, and General McChrystal has asked for 30,000 troops, which he was given. My opponent said it was unconscionable that Nancy Pelosi gave McChrystal the troops he wanted, that she didn't fight Obama on that. I disagree totally. I think that McChrystal has a plan. It's much like the plan, the surge in Iraq, and I think we should give them time to work. And I think the idea that we would wait for the electorate instead of having the military finalize this is not a plan.
Yeah, just going backwards from there, I never said that it was unconscionable that Nancy Pelosi gave McChrystal the troops. What I said was it was unconscionable that someone who hated the wars under George Bush would be so hypocritical as to keep her mouth shut and be silent about it now that there was a new president in. And that was what I said. And if you watch that videotape, you'll hear exactly that. General McChrystal is working towards a peaceful solution. He said it himself. He's shooting for reconciliation in the summer of 2011, and I'm afraid to say that I just don't think it's worth spending that much more time there. I think there's nothing like the peace that you can have today. And my mom always said, shoot for peace today, don't put off till tomorrow the peace that you can have today. The non sequitur there about the border with Pakistan and it has nuclear weapons. Well, there's a reason why we're going into Pakistan, because that's where the Taliban is. And the Taliban wasn't there prior to prior to us going to Afghanistan. And yes, they're going to go right back into Afghanistan, and there's not much that we can do to stop it. I think it's time that I stick with my position. I think it's time that we come home.
Okay, thank you very much. That ends the segment on international and foreign policy. By far the